Today, I want to talk to you about something that touches every one of us, whether we realize it or not. It's about the screens we stare at every day and the state of the heart we carry inside. We live in a world that's brighter than ever on the outside, yet so many hearts are growing dim on the inside. Our phones glow, our laptops shine, our TVs never turn off, but somewhere along the way, our inner light began to flicker. You see, screens themselves aren't the enemy. Technology isn't the problem. The challenge is when what we look at begins to shape who we become. When our eyes are constantly fixed on dark news, endless comparisons, empty entertainment, and negative voices, it slowly drains the joy from our spirit. We may still smile, still function, still go through the motions, but deep down, the heart feels heavy, distracted, and tired. God never designed you to live disconnected from your own soul. He didn't create you to scroll through life feeling empty, anxious, or spiritually numb. He created you to live with clarity, peace, purpose, and a heart full of light. But when our attention is always pulled outward, we forget how to look inward. When our nights are filled with glowing screens, our hearts often miss the gentle glow of God's presence. The good news is this: no matter how dark the screen has been, your heart can shine again. It only takes one decision to shift your focus, one moment of awareness, one step back toward what truly matters. Light always has more power than darkness, and your heart was created to carry light. Maybe you've noticed that the more time you spend online, the less peace you feel. Maybe your faith feels quieter than it used to. Maybe joy feels distant and hope feels faint. Don't be discouraged. This is not condemnation, it's an invitation. An invitation to turn down the noise and turn up the light. An invitation to unplug from what drains you and reconnect with what restores you. When you change what feeds your mind, you change what fuels your heart. When you choose light over distraction, clarity over chaos, and purpose over endless consumption, something powerful begins to happen inside you. Your heart starts to heal. Your thoughts become clearer. Your faith grows stronger. And suddenly, life feels meaningful again. This is your moment to move from dark screens to a lighted heart, to reclaim your peace, to refocus your attention, to allow God to illuminate what's been dimmed and restore what's been neglected. You weren't created to live overwhelmed, distracted, or spiritually drained. You were created to shine. Every screen we look at leaves an imprint on the heart, whether we notice it immediately or not. The eyes are not just windows to the world. They are gateways to the soul, quietly shaping emotions, thoughts, and desires. When a person spends hours absorbing images, words, and messages from a screen, those inputs begin to settle deep within the heart. Over time, what starts as casual viewing becomes a subtle influence that affects peace, faith, confidence, and inner clarity. The heart responds to what the eyes repeatedly consume, and slowly, the condition of the heart reflects the direction of attention. Many people wonder why they feel restless even after moments of entertainment, or why their mind feels cluttered despite having access to so much information. The reason is that the heart was never designed to process endless noise. Screens deliver constant stimulation without giving the heart time to reflect, rest, or heal. When the heart is overwhelmed, it becomes distracted, and when it is distracted, it struggles to hear the gentle guidance that brings wisdom and calm. The heart begins to feel heavy, not because life is harder, but because it is carrying too much that was never meant to stay. What we repeatedly watch trains the heart to react in certain ways. Negative content breeds fear, comparison breeds insecurity, and endless scrolling breeds dissatisfaction. Even when content appears harmless, its quantity can quietly dull sensitivity to what truly matters. The heart grows accustomed to instant gratification and loses patience for stillness, prayer, and reflection. This is how screens influence the heart, not suddenly, but gradually, shaping inner attitudes without asking permission. A guarded heart requires intentional choices. When a person becomes mindful of what enters through the eyes, they regain authority over their inner life. The heart begins to heal when it is no longer bombarded by images that provoke envy, anger, or emptiness. Peace returns when the heart is allowed to breathe, free from constant alerts and digital demands. In that space, clarity emerges, and the heart remembers its original purpose: to connect, to trust, and to believe. The heart thrives on meaning, not on constant stimulation. It needs moments of silence, depth, and sincerity to remain alive and sensitive. When screens dominate attention, the heart often becomes reactive instead of reflective. But when attention is redirected toward uplifting words, purposeful learning, and spiritual nourishment, the heart regains strength. What fills the mind eventually flows into actions, and what shapes actions ultimately defines character. Every choice to limit harmful input is a step toward restoring balance. The heart responds quickly to intentional care, just as dry land responds to rain. When the eyes are guided wisely, the heart follows faithfully. A heart influenced by light becomes peaceful, focused, and resilient, capable of navigating the world without being consumed by it. Darkness does not always enter the heart through obvious wrongdoing. Often it grows quietly through misplaced attention. What we focus on repeatedly begins to take root within us, shaping our thoughts, emotions, and spiritual sensitivity. Attention is powerful because it directs energy, and wherever energy flows, growth follows. When attention is constantly pulled toward negativity, distraction, or emptiness, the heart slowly adapts to that environment. It becomes accustomed to shadows instead of light, noise instead of clarity, and urgency instead of peace. Many people assume darkness is something dramatic, but in reality, it often appears as exhaustion, confusion, or a lack of purpose. When attention is scattered across countless digital inputs, the heart rarely experiences stillness. Without stillness, reflection becomes difficult, and without reflection, the heart loses direction. The constant demand to look, react, and respond leaves little room for the inner voice that brings wisdom and balance. Over time, the heart becomes desensitized, not because it has hardened intentionally, but because it has been stretched in too many directions. Misplaced attention also weakens discernment. When everything competes for focus, nothing feels sacred. The heart begins to treat meaningful moments the same way it treats trivial ones, scrolling past significance without realizing its value. This dilution of focus causes spiritual awareness to fade. The heart still functions, but it no longer feels deeply connected. Faith becomes routine, joy becomes inconsistent, and purpose feels distant, not because it is lost, but because attention is no longer aligned with it. Darkness grows when attention is driven by impulse rather than intention. Algorithms are designed to keep eyes engaged, not hearts fulfilled. They reward reaction, not reflection. When attention is shaped by external forces, the heart slowly surrenders control of its inner atmosphere. Fear-based content breeds anxiety. Comparison-driven images breed dissatisfaction, and endless consumption breeds emptiness. None of these effects happen instantly, but their accumulation slowly dims inner light. The heart was designed to be led, not dragged. It needs guidance, boundaries, and direction to remain healthy. When attention is intentionally redirected toward truth, gratitude, and purpose, darkness loses its grip. Light does not fight darkness aggressively, it simply replaces it. The moment attention shifts toward what uplifts and strengthens, clarity begins to return. The heart responds positively to focus that nourishes rather than drains. Reclaiming attention is an act of self-respect and spiritual responsibility. When a person becomes aware of where their focus goes, they gain the power to choose differently. Each choice to pause, reflect, and redirect weakens the influence of darkness. Over time, the heart grows lighter, not because life becomes easier, but because attention is finally aligned with what gives life meaning. Light does not begin with a dramatic transformation. It begins with a small, intentional decision. The moment a person becomes aware of where their focus has been, a doorway opens to change. Awareness is powerful because it interrupts unconscious patterns and brings choice back into the hands of the heart. When someone decides to shift their attention, even slightly, they create space for light to enter. This shift may seem simple, but it carries the power to change inner direction and restore clarity that has been clouded over time. Conscious focus means choosing what deserves attention instead of allowing attention to be taken. The heart responds immediately to this choice because it was designed to follow direction. When focus is scattered, the heart feels restless and unsettled. When focus is intentional, the heart feels grounded and secure. By deliberately turning attention toward what uplifts, encourages, and strengthens faith, the heart begins to feel supported rather than strained. This is how light begins, not through force, but through alignment. Many people wait for motivation before making changes, but light does not wait for feelings, it responds to decisions. Even on days when energy is low or faith feels quiet, choosing where to place attention still matters. Turning away from what drains the spirit and turning toward what nourishes it gradually reshapes the inner atmosphere. Over time, these small choices accumulate, creating a noticeable difference in emotional balance, spiritual awareness, and overall peace. Conscious focus also restores presence. When attention is no longer fragmented by constant distractions, the heart can fully engage with the moment. Presence allows meaning to surface in ordinary experiences. A conversation feels deeper, reflection feels richer, and moments of stillness feel comforting rather than uncomfortable. This presence reconnects the heart with its purpose, reminding it that life is not meant to be rushed through or consumed passively. Light grows stronger when focus is consistent. One intentional choice leads to another, forming habits that protect the heart. These habits may include limiting exposure to negativity, creating moments of quiet, or engaging with words that inspire hope. Each act of conscious focus reinforces the heart's ability to remain steady in a noisy world. Instead of reacting impulsively, the heart learns to respond thoughtfully. As focus becomes clearer, the heart begins to regain confidence. Doubt loses strength when attention is no longer feeding it. Fear softens when focus is redirected toward trust and gratitude. Peace becomes more accessible because the heart is no longer overwhelmed by unnecessary input. This inner shift does not require perfection, it requires sincerity. The heart does not need constant light to be transformed, only consistent direction toward it. What a person allows into their mind eventually settles into the deeper places of the soul. Thoughts are not temporary visitors, and they are seeds, and every seed carries the potential to grow into attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. When the mind is constantly fed with negativity, distraction, or meaningless content, the soul absorbs that atmosphere. Over time, this inner environment begins to shape how a person sees themselves, how they see others, and how they understand their purpose. The soul reflects the quality of what the mind consumes. The mind acts as a filter between the outer world and the inner being. It processes information, interprets experiences, and assigns meaning. When this filter is overloaded or polluted, clarity becomes difficult. The soul then carries confusion, heaviness, or restlessness without always knowing why. Many people try to fix these feelings externally, but the source often lies in what has been repeatedly allowed into the mind. Peace cannot flourish in a space that is constantly fed with chaos. What feeds the mind also determines emotional reactions. Content that promotes fear breeds anxiety. Content that encourages comparison breeds insecurity. And content that glorifies emptiness breeds dissatisfaction. These emotions do not remain isolated. They influence decisions, relationships, and spiritual sensitivity. The soul becomes reactive instead of reflective, responding to life from a place of imbalance rather than wisdom. When the mind is nourished poorly, the soul struggles to remain steady. Feeding the mind with intention restores alignment. When a person chooses words, images, and ideas that carry truth, hope, and purpose, the soul begins to feel supported rather than strained. Positive and meaningful input strengthens inner resilience. It equips the soul to face challenges without losing balance. This nourishment does not deny reality or ignore difficulties. It provides the inner strength to navigate them with clarity and faith. Consistency matters more than intensity. Occasional moments of inspiration cannot counteract constant exposure to negativity. The soul responds to patterns, not isolated events. When the mind is regularly fed with wisdom, reflection, and encouragement, the soul gradually becomes calmer and more focused. Over time, thoughts become clearer, emotions become more stable, and spiritual awareness deepens. A well-fed mind creates space for growth. It allows the soul to reconnect with its values and its sense of direction. When mental input aligns with purpose, the soul feels anchored. It becomes easier to make decisions, to trust the process of life, and to remain hopeful even in uncertainty. The condition of the soul is never separate from the nourishment of the mind. What the mind consumes ultimately defines the strength and direction of the soul. Distraction rarely appears as something harmful at first. It often feels harmless, even productive. Yet over time, constant distraction slowly erodes spiritual clarity. When attention is repeatedly pulled in multiple directions, the heart and mind struggle to remain aligned. Spiritual awareness requires presence, and presence cannot exist in a state of continual interruption. Each notification, each unnecessary glance, and each moment of divided focus weakens the ability to remain spiritually attentive. Clarity is born in stillness, but distraction thrives in noise. When life becomes a continuous stream of stimulation, the inner voice grows faint. The guidance that once felt clear becomes harder to recognize. This does not mean faith has disappeared. It means the environment of the heart has become too crowded. Spiritual clarity fades, not because truth is absent, but because attention is unavailable. The soul cannot reflect what it cannot fully receive. Distraction also shortens patience. Spiritual growth requires time, reflection, and consistency, but distraction trains the mind to seek instant results. This impatience makes spiritual practices feel slow or unfulfilling. Moments of prayer, contemplation, or learning may seem less engaging than digital stimulation, causing them to be neglected. Over time, the soul becomes conditioned to avoid depth, choosing immediacy over meaning. When distraction dominates, discernment weakens. Everything begins to feel equally important even when it is not. The heart struggles to prioritize what truly matters because focus is scattered. Important values are pushed aside by urgent but insignificant demands. Spiritual clarity depends on recognizing what deserves attention and what does not. Without this discernment, the soul feels overwhelmed and directionless. Reducing distraction is not about rejecting modern life, it is about restoring balance. Intentional pauses create room for awareness to return. When distractions are limited, the heart regains sensitivity. Thoughts slow down, emotions settle, and spiritual insight becomes accessible again. The mind begins to notice what was previously ignored, and the soul responds with renewed understanding. Clarity strengthens when attention is unified. When the heart is no longer divided between countless inputs, it can engage deeply with truth and purpose. This unity allows faith to feel alive rather than routine. Spiritual clarity is not something that must be chased. It naturally emerges when distraction is removed. The soul remembers how to listen, how to reflect, and how to remain anchored in what gives life meaning. Stillness is not emptiness. It is a sacred space where guidance becomes audible. In a world driven by speed, noise, and constant engagement, stillness often feels uncomfortable because it removes distractions and exposes the inner state of the heart. Yet it is precisely in this quiet that clarity begins to form. When external noise fades, the heart becomes more receptive, and the mind slows enough to recognize wisdom that is usually drowned out. Divine guidance does not compete for attention, it waits patiently for awareness. Many people seek direction while remaining surrounded by constant stimulation. They want answers but avoid silence. Stillness creates an environment where the heart can listen rather than react. It allows thoughts to settle and emotions to find balance. Without stillness, guidance feels distant, not because it is absent, but because the heart is too occupied to receive it. Stillness gently realigns focus, creating room for insight to emerge naturally. The heart was designed to recognize truth, but recognition requires calm. When life is lived in constant motion, decisions are often driven by impulse or pressure. Stillness interrupts this cycle. It slows the inner rhythm and allows intuition, conscience, and faith to surface. In this space, guidance feels less like instruction and more like understanding. Answers arrive quietly, often as clarity rather than words. Stillness also builds trust. When a person pauses instead of rushing, they demonstrate faith that direction does not require urgency. This trust deepens spiritual awareness. The heart learns that it does not need to control every outcome or anticipate every step. Guidance unfolds gradually, revealing what is needed at the right moment. Stillness teaches patience, and patience strengthens discernment. Creating moments of stillness does not require isolation from life. It requires intention. A few quiet moments free from distraction can reset the heart. These moments act as anchors, grounding the soul amid uncertainty. In stillness, the heart remembers its values and reconnects with its purpose. Confusion begins to dissolve because clarity thrives in calm environments. Stillness also restores sensitivity. Constant noise dulls awareness, but quiet sharpens perception. Subtle insights become noticeable. Emotional patterns become clearer. The heart becomes more honest with itself. This honesty is essential for guidance because clarity cannot coexist with denial or avoidance. Stillness invites reflection, and reflection invites growth. When stillness becomes a habit, guidance becomes familiar. The heart no longer panics in uncertainty because it recognizes the rhythm of clarity. Decisions feel more aligned, not because life becomes simpler, but because the heart is better prepared to navigate complexity. Stillness transforms waiting into listening and silence into understanding. In the quiet, direction finds its way gently into the heart, shaping actions with wisdom and calm assurance.